And so I'll introduce myself. I'm Bob Primak. I recently bought this baby, which is a new laptop. So the topic came up about buying a computer and some criteria. I'm going to leave the Mac stuff and the refurbished and all of that to Steve. He's going to be talking later. So without further ado, things to look for when buying a new PC. And this background logo will go away eventually. You'll probably either be running Mac OS, which leaves you with their ecosystem, or you'll be using Windows. And in Windows, Microsoft usually knows best. Is there any way to minimize this and get it out of my way?
Which stuff?
The people.
Okay,
there they are.
Yeah, hit the underbar, top left.
Well, done.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, continuing. Microsoft knows probably best. And Microsoft classifies its users into 6 main categories, or 4 main categories, depending on what they're trying to do. The 4 basic categories that they have in the first reference, which explains things in a narrative format. There is an everyday user who browses, streams, shops, and checks email. There is the creator who is editing photos, graphics, or video. There's a gamer who might be playing with indies, competitive titles, or both. And there is a multitasker or remote worker juggling calls, files, and endless tabs. But I think there are more practical. Okay, well, I think there are more practical categories that they use in their choosing a computer reference, which is the second one that I listed on that slide. There are people who want just the basics. There are people who want something that their family would be using. There are people who have work or school requirements. There are people who use computers for entertainment. And there are people who use the computers for creating and gaming. And that's an approximate ascending order of less demanding to more demanding use cases. I'll use those categories because they're more practical. Different needs point you toward different specs. Creators and gamers benefit from stronger processors and dedicated graphics. Multitaskers thrive with more RAM. Digital pack rats might want plenty of fast SSD storage. So if you're just doing the basics, your workload is probably light. You mostly work with basic programs and documents. Don't use the computer for work or anything. Your browsing is light, prefer shopping, connecting, and searching with a few tabs open. Okay, what happened now? And photo or video editing, if you're a beginner in that realm, you aren't going to be editing a lot of photos or videos, and you're likely to be somebody who only knows the basics of whatever software you're using. Where the PC is used, probably anywhere with a wireless connection. The PC needs to be as mobile as you are. This is increasingly the norm among basic category users. In fact, they're using phones as much as they are computers for that reason. So where's the primary data storage? For most basic users, it's in the cloud, quite frankly. You store most of your files on a cloud-based platform similar to OneDrive. So the most important thing that a basic user is going to consider is portability, most likely. Looking for a lightweight and compact PC that you can take anywhere. Microsoft recommends for this category either a laptop or a 2-in-1, an 11 to 14-inch display, kind of like this. And I think they're correct. Where I disagree is on some of the specs for the best user experience with Windows 11 if it's being used cloud first. Microsoft says you can get away with entry-level processors like Intel Pentium, Celeron, and Athlon. No way. Not with Windows 11. Intel Core i3. Well, there is no I in Intel Core processors any longer. And I would recommend the Core 5 probably on upward, not a Core Ultra or any of these other fancy ones. AMD Ryzen, not 3, not even most of the 5s. They don't work with Windows 11. But AMD Ryzen, some of the higher end 5s, the 7s, and the 9s are great with Windows 11. You don't need the AI 300 series for basic use. And as I say, these are woefully inadequate processors in today's AI-intensive world. And moving up at least one tier from Microsoft's recommendations is just absolutely necessary. So, all right. What you do not need at the basics level is an NPU. I know Microsoft is pushing Copilot PCs with their NPUs, but that's also on ARM architecture. They use Snapdragon processors. You will find that Snapdragon processors can handle Microsoft's idea of what you want to run, but if you get anybody else's software in there, it's going to be hopeless. This is not like Apple Silicon, which has really nice ARM architecture and might be discussed later. So you don't need excessive graphics RAM or discrete graphics processing if you're just a basic entry-level user. So I just slashed a lot of the cost of a new PC because between the NPU and the graphics RAM and storage, you're talking about 1/3 of the cost of a new PC for RAM. And it's getting worse all the time. So you're welcome. Now, more specs. The RAM, Microsoft is recommending 4 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes. I defy anyone to run Windows 11 with less than 16 gigabytes of RAM. It will crawl. So 8 to 16 gigabytes. So there, I just took back some of the savings from the previous slide. Storage, Microsoft recommends 64 gigabytes to 128 gigabytes. That would be adequate for basic use if you're storing mostly in the cloud and if you don't consider something about SSDs. Because of their wear properties, they need to be over-provisioned. So you need maybe as much as 1/4 of your SSD unallocated. And that's bringing you up into the 256 gigabyte, 512 gigabyte. If you store a lot of photos and videos and documents on the PC and never back it up, which most people do, you might want a 1 terabyte SSD and pray that you don't ever lose your PC. What you do need to do is back up your data, either to the cloud or locally, preferably both. So you buy more rather than less when it comes to storage, as you probably will not be opening up any entry-level laptop to upgrade the internal components. That's also why you need to start with more RAM. And the display resolution is the number of pixels on the screen, determines the image sharpness. HD, as Microsoft calls it, is now 1920 by 1080. That's the old 2K. And 4K is 3840 by 2160. And you'd be crazy to get that in an entry-level machine. And you couldn't. We can see a progression as we move up the scale, but I'm going to skip some of the Microsoft categories for now to show you what the higher end ones are. And if you go to the reference, try Microsoft's pick your computer page for yourself and see what they come up with for you. You might have some interesting insights, or you might go, man, they crazy. So gaming, complex and realistic gaming. And this also includes online gaming. This is the most challenging category and shows the opposite extreme. A gamer might say, I play immersive games with more sophisticated graphics, like Forza and Halo. And where is the computer used? Probably more at home, but they move around. So they mostly want to use the PC at home, but they also want to be able to take it to a cafe or a library. And that's common among serious gamers. Where data is stored. For gamers, it's often in the cloud. most of the files are on a cloud-based platform like OneDrive. Some gamers are pretty sophisticated about storage and backup, and they will go for a lot of local storage, or they may even have a separate server for that sort of thing. But cloud first is common among gamers, though not universal. The most important feature for any gamer is performance. A PC designed for speed, performance, and multitasking. Ask any gamer, they'll give you that answer. Also, most content creators will say that. Gaming. Microsoft recommends a laptop with a 13 to 17-inch display. Larger displays are common among gaming laptops. The processor will be advanced, more advanced even than the Core 7. It will be a Core Ultra. Instead of a Ryzen 7, it'll probably be the AMD Ryzen 7 AI 300 series or the Intel Core 9 Ultra. I think they have even numbers higher than 9 now. And the AMD Ryzen 9, again, the AI series. Intel is no longer using Core I, and AMD chips are much more advanced than Microsoft indicated they knew. But these specs here are much more realistic than the previous specs for just the basics. An NPU may be necessary for some of the more advanced games these days, and certainly in the near future, it will be used. AMD has a nice series of AI chips now. Intel is playing catch up in that regard. Graphics, dedicated GPU and VRAM, and a good NPU. NPU can be used also to accelerate graphics. And NVIDIA GeForce RTX, AMD Radeon RX, I suspect these are last generation and they're better cards now. And some of the Intel Arc discrete graphic processing units would help perform graphically, and as much dedicated video RAM as you can possibly get. There is a new concept called unified RAM, where the CPU and NPU are using dedicated portions of the system RAM, and you can set that. On this laptop, I have reset it so that it uses some of its 32 gigabytes of system RAM for graphics, and that got rid of a screen flashing problem. So gamers run into these sorts of things all the time, and they have to fuss around with that sort of thing. And it's also a problem with people who do photo and video editing. So you got to check the system requirements for the games you play or the editing software you're going to use. And RAM, again, 8 to 16 gigabytes is way too little. Most gamers will go 32 gigabytes or even 64 gigabytes of RAM. And at that point, you run into heat issues with the DDR5 RAM. And also their storage will run into heat issues if it's really fast storage, like the 5th gen M5s, M2s, 5th gen M2s. PCIe 5 is what it's referred to as. Those run so hot, you may need liquid cooling. But anyway, gaming PCs have these high-end specs, and they are priced accordingly, and it's getting a lot worse with the shortages that exist. Display resolution. I personally don't know what QHD means. We'll have to ask some gamers about that. But resolution, again, could be 1920 by 1080, bare minimum for gaming. 4K is more likely for gamers, and that's as much as 3840 by 2160. And there are other tricks that are used to enhance screen appearance and sharpness, including HDR. So the storage, not 256 gigabytes to 512, more like 512 gigabytes is the floor for serious gamers. And 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, even 4 terabyte SSDs are common among gamers. And they're getting hard to get a hold of because of AI data center competition, etc. I'll look at what's in the chat later. So what's out there, and what do reliable tech sites have to say about what's good, what's bad, and what's best? And at this point, I'm going to see if I can take a look at that chat because it might be,
No, just the definition of QHD.
oh,
It's something,
QHD, quad high definition,
And it-
2560 by 1440. Thank you.
Also, I saw that it's basically 4K.
4K.
It's just another way of saying 4K.
So QHD is often synonymous, though not exactly technically, with 4K. 4K actually has a higher resolution, slightly higher than the QHD that was spec'd in the chat. So now we have a range from just the basics to the most advanced gaming and video editing for content creator needs.
Can I ask a quick question about?
Yes,
What's an AI chip? Is it something that is been manufactured to do AI well on? Or
It's
what?
an NPU,
the
isn't it?
difference is AI chips have an integrated NPU, a neural processing unit. Now, the neural processing unit is basically a vector math coprocessor. It does other things, but it also may have on some systems dedicated RAM or really fast RAM, similar to VRAM.
It's the one.
And
that
again, that's
the company
VRAM.
made that's really making a lot of.
VRAM doesn't just mean video.
Yeah, NVIDIA. Yeah.
And so it's similar to a GPU, except it's optimized for the transforms necessary for AI.
Yes, you can in fact use some GPUs to do AI, LLMs, local LLMs, but I would not do that if you have.
I'm just talking generically.
Yeah, but generically, they're very similar in their function, except the NPU is a much better math coprocessor than the typical GPU. And again, they use this fast. VRAM can also stand for vector RAM, which is what it processes best, far better than your system RAM. System RAM DDR5X is getting really fast, but it's not as fast as these 40 trillion operations per second NPUs may need. They also generate heat. And that can be a problem.
Well, there's a low. You mentioned the Snapdragon.
Yes.
What context were you mentioning it in, and what was it about?
Low-end Copilot PCs, the first ones that came out, were using an ARM architecture called Snapdragon. That's the basic chipset. And that integrates everything into a system on a chip. And it's really low-end if you're talking Snapdragon. Snapdragon is also found in phones. So it's basically a glorified phone that you're carrying with you. Only it can do Copilot AI, some local processing. ARM is different in its requirements for AI processing from the full instruction set chips. And so we'll see perhaps in descriptions of Apple Silicon why it actually is better for the ARM experience. They have really advanced ARM architecture in there. They've integrated different kinds of cores. They've integrated the graphics into the system on a chip, and it's really good graphics. But they've also integrated a lot of the memory that's associated with it, so it's not swappable. It's not upgradable. You buy what you need and what you think you will need if you buy any of the Apple Silicon. As far as I know, I could be correct. I could be corrected on this. There may be some upgradability. Separate graphics cards are not common in Apple Silicon, but they can be added. And I saw the head shake that no, you can't do much upgrading with Apple Silicon.
It's a closed
integrated system on a chip.
It's closed system.
Yeah.
The Qualcomm
Well,
does
I'll
have,
get into this. I'll get into that on the Mac side.
Good.
the Qualcomm does have one plus going for it.
Yeah.
The battery life is huge.
Oh, yes, they are very energy efficient. They have performance cores and efficiency cores. Efficiency cores take very little power. You can get,
Like about 30 hours worth.
yeah, you can get a day or two or three out of a single charge on these ARM-based laptops. Even the more sophisticated Apple ones get more than a day on a charge. Quite good performance with battery. But they don't perform in certain ways as well as the full instruction set chips. It depends on what you're doing. Windows is geared toward one way of doing things. Apple has things geared toward a totally different way of doing things.
I thought everybody was running RISC chips,
No,
reduced instruction set.
no.
Try to push people towards that to compete with the Chromebooks, right? Because that's low end. So there's no native Intel instructions running on those boxes. It's all emulation. And that's why the software doesn't work in many cases for third parties.
Well,
Microsoft
what
has
had it-
invested.
What had to happen was
Well,
Windows
RISC can runs an Intel set, except it's a reduced instruction set. So you can't use all the same basic underlying transforms that you can with an Intel chip.
So there's a
I-
legacy set of instructions that Intel has that run on older PCs and so on. That same software will have troubles running or will run differently unless it's emulated
Yes,
on a
Windows-
RISC set.
And that's right. And that's what they do to get around some sort of fancy manipulation that a Intel chip may use, is they use emulation. So instead of one step to go from point A to point B, it takes the old fashioned 3 steps.
Yeah,
Again,
and
from point
that
A to
can
point
be
B.
less
Interpreter.
efficient. That can be less efficient.
Yeah, it is by definition.
And so what's happening is Windows has been undergoing a rewrite for ARM. And much of its software, including the Adobe Cloud, well, Adobe Cloud is up in the cloud, but some of the local software has also been adapting to ARM. And on the Linux side, they have got Linux running on Apple Silicon now, which is pretty new. That's ARM. But for Windows, you have these full instruction set chips. And again, in some ways they perform better. In other ways, they do use more power, they heat up more, and there can be some other issues, especially for gamers. But some games won't yet run on ARM correctly. So where I was what's out there, and I want to offer some insights on my own search if we have time. I am a hobbyist, a system tweaker type of user, but I'm not a gamer, not a content creator, and not a programmer, not a developer. Let's see if we are. Okay, when I selected the reviews to include today, I made some choices based on my experiences with review sites in general lately. These are my opinions only. I'm not going to use sites like Consumer Reports, CNET Reviews, or TechRadar. TechRadar may be reviewing some PCs not available in the North American market. Consumer Reports has lately been less and less informative on a lot of things. CNET has a reputation for not promoting the technically best products, but rather the ones which are best paid for to the publication, my opinion. I also did not select Phoronix, as they give a lot of technical details, which is good, but it's too much for our time limitations today. So these are, I just want to see if I can pull up the best laptops from PC Mac. And here we are. They have things like, for most people, they like the HP OmniBook 514. And if I can get that drop down to drop down, I know why it won't. Maybe that'll help. There. They don't like ad blockers. So the OmniBook, the pros are it has field leading battery life, and I think we're going to see why. 34 hours on a charge. It has an OLED display, which is nice for a laptop, but the keyboard is mushy, plastic feeling, and the graphics are not great. Now, what I want to do is see if I can open this link. Keep on doing that, and we're going to see what HP says about it. And that's not going to be the right link for that. A little conflict with the Zoom controls. All right. What I'm going to do is go over to their review and then I can get the other links. And we might be able to get a little bit more detail on the specs just here. The processor is a Snapdragon. That's what I wanted to point out. That's why it gets the long battery life. The RAM is 32 gigabytes with the Snapdragon processor. And the drive that they tested is 1 terabyte. The native display is 1920 by 1200, but apparently this isn't a great screen. And Windows 11 here would be home. It's also very lightweight. And at the time this was written, it was starting at about $879 to $900. And that's pretty close to how it was when I followed the link. So the current pricing on this particular one is very close to what it was when it was reviewed. What I want to do is move up a little to, I'm going to skip all this Mac stuff. Desktop replacement laptop, if you're doing that. They have recommended something like the Framework 16. I'm going to go more into the Framework laptops and what the concept is at the very end, toward the very end, because it's a do-it-yourself one. But I found that the specs that they are stating for their Framework Laptop 16 do not match the price that they said. It's really closer to $2,000 for an AMD Ryzen A9, a Ryzen AI 9 processor. A dedicated graphics card, which I do not have. This is the 13-inch one. NVIDIA RTX 5070 GPU. So it's very versatile, and because you can replace pretty much everything inside of it, it's a modular, customizable design. You can swap out, you can hot swap ports and everything. And this does add a bit to the price. So if fooling around with a laptop isn't your thing, you might want something different. And for a business laptop, and this one is, all right, yeah. This one's the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon Gen 13. Gen 14 is also recommended for some people. And that one is lightweight. It's got a really nice OLED display. The keyboard is pretty good. Lenovo is noted for having nice feeling keyboards. If you want to have a wide area option, WWAN, that's an add-on. But they do have that option. And I believe they have Windows Pro. And so the pricing is about $1,800, $1,900. And if we take a look, we can see what they've thrown in. The browser doesn't like redirects. Okay. It's a 14-inch laptop. It's Intel based. Specs. It's an Intel Core Ultra 5. And that is going to be a pretty nice one. It also comes with, it could come with an Ultra 7. And there are 2 different Ultra 7s. It will run Windows Pro, which is recommended. And it also is known to be good on some Linux distros like Ubuntu and Fedora. The graphics will tend to be integrated Intel Arc. And it has as much as 32 gigabytes, but it's soldered in. You won't be able to change it once you buy it. And you can get up to a 2 terabyte PCIe. I heard that what? Memory is increasingly being soldered in to laptop motherboards. Even SSDs are being soldered in now on some models. And it is not to my liking because I like to be able to upgrade or repair if needed.
Why do they do that?
To make the manufacturing easier, but there's something else. You have to have, for an NPU to work properly, and for some of the advanced graphics to work properly, you have to have really close proximity between the memory and the processor. And the only way to do that is to have a solder connection.
If you put it on a bus, the latency is too big.
Yeah, the bus latency is too much. You're talking about 48 trillion operations per second here. You're not going to be able to do that without a solder joint.
I do all the time.
48 trillion times. Well, your brain does it, but. And it
His
doesn't
brain
have
was
solder
I
soldered.
forget.
Yeah,
I violently disagree with that.
You gotta get the lead solder out of your head, though.
the battery is 57 watt hours and it supports rapid charge, which by the way will destroy your battery life over time. And various things. Oh, ports. It has 4 ports. 2 are the traditional USB type A. The other 2 are Thunderbolt 4, 40 gigabits per second. And it's Wi-Fi 7BE, 2x2. So, and then of course the WWAN is optional. So these are among the things that PC Mag is rating as good. And I'm going to close these tabs just so I don't confuse myself. And I'm going to pull down the browser. Now, Tom's Hardware, I have to be careful of the time that I'm using now. Tom's Hardware has some premium laptops that they are recommending. And they have something that's a Mac, and they have a Lenovo Yoga 9i 2-in-1 Aura. And someone has one. Okay, well, let's take a look at what it looks like over at Best Buy. Oh, come on, it can't so be reached. All right, we will view it at Lenovo. There we go. The Aura, $1,700, $1,600 base price. And the specs. Core Ultra 7. Nice. Windows 11 Home, though you could upgrade to Pro. I recommend Pro for everybody because of the kind of control you have over certain kinds of settings, updates, and various other things that Microsoft wants you to do things one way with a Microsoft account, but if you want to do it the other way, it's easier to do with Pro. There's 16 gigabytes of memory in here. What I have a little bit of an issue with is the 512 gigabyte SSD. I would be more comfortable with a 1 terabyte. And there may be an option for a 1 terabyte in one of their related models. Yeah, there is.
That's right.
So was that more expensive than $1,600?
No, I got mine in November.
Which translates to about $1,900 now because of rises in RAM prices and storage prices. Yeah, so it's a bit more, but not that much. So the display is 2.8K, which is 2800 by 1800. That's basically 2K. OLED, it's got, it's a touch screen, HDR, and it has a fingerprint reader, and it even has a pen. You use a pen on yours?
I use it to try it out.
So it's not a commonly used item. Okay.
That's what I do.
Okay.
When you tried the pen, did it do what? Script to text? Did it do OCR on what you were writing? Did you try that? You went like that and said, yeah, it works. Okay.
So Bob, you're assuming that everybody, they're all touch screens?
No,
So that's another feature. And then the lightable keyboard.
most of the keyboards are backlit these days,
Okay.
not all. But touchscreen, you have to check. You won't always find it.
The screen on a laptop can be a real pain in the six one.
Yeah, this one, for example, has no touchscreen. And it also has a trackpad that, this touchpad, I wish I had something better. But for a do-it-yourself, it's not bad.
You can stick a mouse on there, Bob.
I have. I have one in my bag. I just don't want to use it right now. Now, the Dell XPS 14 is one of the best respected laptops out there. And it has really long battery life. And its display is 1920 by 1200. It's non-touch. And let's see some more specs. And then we'll get to our list of the specs, and then I might be able to get my own specs. What they were dealing with, I believe, was probably, what did they say they had? They had a Core Ultra 7. That'd be this guy. Okay. Now and I also want to select, because I recommend it, Windows Pro. They offer it for just $60 more. Many manufacturers do give discounts on the operating system because they know everything else is expensive anyway. And they get bulk discounts for themselves. So you're talking about maybe $1,700, $1,800 for this
By the way, if you buy Windows Home and you want to get an upgrade key, they are available on the internet, key only, at a much, much reduced price.
True. Be careful where you get them, but yes.
I don't care where I get it, as long as it works.
That's the thing.
That's the point.
You sometimes get a winner, you sometimes don't. This one has 16 gigabytes of RAM. I would raise that. And it has a 512 gigabyte M2 SSD, and I would raise that. So that'd be probably a total of, now look at what doubling the RAM cost you. $350. That's due to the current market. That's right. It has tripled since November. I find similar things for the components of my Framework 13, if you can even find them. Some of them go out of stock. And so so far, a larger SSD is not costing a huge amount. That is going to change. And just so we get the display, it's non-touch, 2K. You could also get, for 150 more, you could get 2.8K, and both of them do 120 hertz, which is twice the normal refresh rate. Okay, and so that's enough from Tom's hardware, so we'll get everything done here.
And I forget, I think, because I have a Dell, I have an XPS 15 on mobile one. I think memory, you can change memory in that. It's not solid.
It's not solid. Dell does a good job of letting you do repairs and upgrades.
It's a solid machine.
They're nice. They're nice about that. Some of the others, it depends on whether you're doing their high end or their lower end ones. Most Apple is very repairable. The Apple Neo, which is their newest, really low end, cheap laptop, is repairable, but there are problems with its specs.
I don't know, in your investigation, my experience, not recently, historically, has been the less expensive the computer is, the more locked down the computer is.
That is not true of the Apple Neo, but it is generally true.
Yeah, I haven't looked. I haven't looked at the Apple products.
If you have an ARM-based Windows laptop, it's likely everything's soldered in, and it's likely all on one board, and you are stuck with what you've got.
Yeah, and it's also, we got more plastic the lower you go too.
Yeah.
Instead of-
Yeah,
instead of metal.
plastic versus metal. This is metal, except for the Zell, whereas plastic is common in the other ones. Okay, let's just quickly go through what Windows Central has to say for themselves. And
By the way, Bob, you don't have to rush because this is a period. Steve has some stuff. But between the two of you, take an hour and a half, we're done.
yeah, but what I'm doing is trying not to take the whole hour and a half.
Nope.
Windows Central likes the Surface Pro 11. I stay away from Microsoft Surface because there have been lots of reports of some issues with it. But if you want a thin and light, we can have this is Zen A16. So now we're looking at another manufacturer. This one is Snapdragon based, and it's said to be an AI laptop, which means it's probably one of these Copilot PCs. And it has 48 gigabytes of RAM. Now, the amount of RAM means something different in ARM from what it means in full instruction set, because they may use some of it for graphics. The storage is 1 terabyte, and it's a 16-inch OLED, and it's 2880 by 1800, 120 hertz, which is not bad for a display. 70 watt-hour battery, which on ARM would last forever. So let's see whether Amazon
That kind of hurts for gamers.
Not any longer. Many people like for streaming to have 120 hertz.
You're only gonna get 60 frames a second at the most anyway.
No. 120 hertz means it's got 120 frames
I know
per
that.
second.
No,
When it comes
but
over the internet, it's
but
only
the-
60.
What's coming down to you is only 60 hertz max.
If it's YouTube, if it's Netflix, I don't know what Netflix is like. Whether they have a tier that will stream.
Netflix is pretty good. They throttle according to your bandwidth, so that if you have low bandwidth at your house, they give you something that meets that bandwidth, so that the picture quality isn't degraded.
Yeah.
It's transparent and amazing.
Question is whether you need 4K or not, right?
There
Well,
it is.
and the whole thing,
Yeah. Well, you're gonna pay for anything.
It's 2.8K, which Best Buy is calling 3K, rounding up. And it's got the Snapdragon X2 Elite Extreme, which is a pretty good ARM chip, but it doesn't compare with Apple Silicon. And it's $1,700. This is for an ARM laptop. $1,700, but it's got 1 terabyte of storage, 48 gig of RAM, and so it should be fairly reasonable. I don't see anything about an NPU, but I'm pretty sure it's
I
somewhere
think
there.
they said NPU or something on the first sheet for this. If you go back to your other spec from right there, Qualcomm Hexagon 80 tops NPU.
Yeah, 80 tops. So there is an NPU. The Snapdragon the Snapdragon Elite series do have NPUs. There is no question about that. So anyway, that's what this one is. It's a low end. And let me make sure I'm on the right. Let me make sure I'm on the Windows Central. Okay, there we are. Now, let's see what they offer for best game. We'll go with best gaming and then best value. Best gaming, they have a Lenovo Legion Pro 7i Gen 10. And this has specs that make it look like it's probably pretty high-end. Intel Core Ultra 9 and NVIDIA 5090 is available. 64 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, and it's upgradable from there, apparently. Storage is 3 terabytes. I don't know why people want 3 terabytes. It's in between 2 and 4. But I haven't seen those as individual items. The battery is 80 watt hours, or for the highest end ones, 99, almost 100 watt hours. which you would need. It's got one Thunderbolt 4 port and one USB-C Gen 2 port and two USB-A, which is basically the old 3.0. And it's got another USB 3.2, which is a little faster. It's got HDMI, and it's got apparently Ethernet. And so let me see if I can take a look at this. Again, this is supposedly a gaming laptop. And you build your own, but the base price is $2,500, which is considerably more than anything else that we've seen yet. And that's at a discount, allegedly. So that's that one. Now, let's see one more from them, and then we'll get on to what and these articles all have tips on what you should be looking. Let's see what they say is the best business laptop. Now, this may be a price. Yeah, this is going to be a pricey one that's for business users. I'm going to skip that and go with what is Best Designs. That's the Yoga. Here's a 16-inch. Okay, there are two of the Yogas that were mentioned. Let's see, Best AI. That would be the Microsoft Surface. Okay, let me go with that. Let's see if that's different. Here we go. The HP OmniBook 514, which has shown up in another review, they say is the best value Windows laptop. This one is the one. This one also has a Snapdragon processor, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and 1 terabyte of storage. And we have already checked that out.
What do they think a business computer user is? How do they classify them? Microsoft classification, how would they classify them?
Business user is going, I'll show you what they have for business. And this is fairly typical. This article specifies what a business user would be using. And it is an HP EliteBook. And it's 14-inch. WUGA will find out what that is. 32 gigabytes RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, Intel Arc, Windows 11 Pro, and this one isn't too bad at $1,400. I've seen some that have business things like network connections, and interfaces, and a whole bunch of extra specs for if you're using it to control multiple machines or as an interface with a server, and those range up into the $4,000 range. So this is a business class HP laptop.
They give you a $50 plug-in USB hub. Look at that.
Yep. But yeah,
We should get it on Temu.
screen resolution is 1920 by 1200. Not bad. A gigabyte of storage. Core Ultra 7 Series 2. Series 3 is current. 32 gigabytes of RAM and 14-inch display. I'd say it's not too bad, depending on what ports it's got. Best Buy isn't good on telling you what the ports are.
To me, that looks like simple use for business people who have to travel, have to carry it with them.
That's exactly what this is aimed at. So what you mean by business depends on
Someone who goes to the site, and has to travel, has to lug.
I don't think it means much. As you just said, what you mean by Windows depends on what you mean by Windows.
And what you mean by business depends on what.
I mean by Windows for business, yes.
Like an insurance salesman would have something like that.
You may need something different.
Yeah.
Usually business laptops are distinguished by
Goes to his
better
clients.
build, metal construction, Windows Pro operating system, usually better storage, and a lot of connectivity, but not a lot of ports. This one has one HDMI port, and I am looking for how many USB ports it has.
It looks like, that's that little dongle there, you get a USB hub, so you get 3 USB hubs by plugging in a little piece of plastic.
Yeah, which tells me it probably on board has only 2.
Or
One
maybe
is for charging.
Maybe only one.
Yeah, one is for charging. And that's why they do that. We might even see in the features what the situation is. Okay. Fingerprint reader. BE wireless.
Bob.
And
Click on the
USB type,
see more up
two
there.
Thunderbolt 4, USB 3.2 type C, which is probably the 10 Gbps. I'm
Yep.
thinking headphone, microphone, jack, but the Thunderbolt 4 is as much as 40 gigabits per second. And it is Windows Pro. And it includes a dock.
Includes a what?
It includes a dock, which is USB type A, 5 gigabits per second.
Also known
That's
as
that
USB
hub.
hub.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yep,
That's what I said. The $50 dongle.
they're calling it a dock, but it's really
It's
a
an
hub.
$8 dongle, maybe.
Yeah.
Right? Good. Okay,
Maybe $50.
so that's basics on those things. Let's see what else I am doing. What I considered buying. Yeah, I think I'm doing pretty well on it. I decided early on not to consider HP laptops. They just don't have as good repairability reputation. And I found the business class models don't offer all the features of the Lenovo, Dell, and a few others that I looked at. So all good, solid, repairable PCs and laptops are more expensive than you expect. Just know this going into your search. And I do have some tabs bookmarked, but I think I am going to skip the process I went through because I've already shown you a lot of what other people say, and I've made my own commentary about what's good and what's not good. And what I found was similar items that are out there, but I was comparing with my particular needs. So what I ended up, and I have slides in case you want to go through the process. These are the ones I looked at. There were 4 of them I looked at before I got to this one. Framework 13. And as you can see, this is one where you actually put the parts in yourself. You take the back off of it, and you take the keyboard off of it. You put the bezel in. You put in your RAM, which is not easy to put into this model. You put in your storage, which is just a single internal storage slot. The RAM is right in here, left and right. And that's tough to get in because one of them goes upside down.
Still drop it.
One of them goes upside down, and that's really tough.
So this is something like a hobbyist would get, right? Because some assembly required.
Like I said,
Yeah.
it's sold by IKEA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Comes
it's
with a little
the,
Allen wrench.
it's the IKEA of laptops. You don't really spend more money on it than you do on comparable specs on pre-built these days. But it does allow you future upgrade. You can even take the motherboard out of here and put in a different one. So if you don't like the AMD, you can put an Intel in, but I have an AMD. And you can change the Wi-Fi card. The Wi-Fi card is right there.
Have you tried using their support line yet?
They don't have a phone support. What they have is a user forum, which is very responsive. You get a pretty quick turnaround in that. And they have tutorials and pictorial tutorials. I have not yet needed any kind of support that wasn't available in their tutorials or in their forums.
So you bought a kit that had the components and you had to assemble, or did they pre-assemble it for you?
Yeah, there were some components. I had to put in the RAM. I had to put in the storage. The battery was already there. I had to put in the bezel, which is tricky on these.
What about the quality of the components that they use?
You can bring your own, which would mean you can get any quality you want. They supply mid-range components, not cheap, not expensive. And they have Let me show you some of the options. Memory. Now, they don't tell you what brand memory it is, but you could bring something from Crucial or some of the others if you can get any. Storage, however, is WD Black, which is good. Those SSDs are good. And they do WD, they don't do SanDisk.
Not sure.
Okay,
Was there
so
a question? Thank you.
okay, so like I say, the RAM prices have been going up, the SSD prices have been going up. But other than that, let me just do something similar to what I did and make a couple of selections. I did 32 gig, which is 2 times 16. And I did Ryzen AI 7 350. About 1900, I ended up a little over 2000 because of some of the add-ons I did. And way down here, the most modular thing about it are the expansion cards. And you can get USB-C, USB-A, HDMI 3rd generation. You can get an Ethernet. And if you only need it sometimes, you can literally slide one out and slide another in. Don't even have to turn off the PC. Display port.
So this is like, you just plug it, obviously, you just plug it into the USB-C port on the computer, on the side there.
There are actually slots, and these things slide out. They're about, a half an inch to an inch wide, a little more than a half inch wide, and they go about an inch in, and the interior are USB-C ports.
Probably Thunderbolt, right?
That's for stability.
So they're basically like dongles.
Yeah, except that
It's the same as a port on the outside, they just make a little recess for it, so when you
Yes.
actually, instead of sticking out the side of your laptop, it's nested in a little garage on the side,
Yeah,
but it's the same effect.
But it gives you the external connector to HDMI, Ethernet,
right.
micro SD. Or
That's exactly what it does.
Yeah,
so
what does the Ethernet one look like? I'm curious, because it doesn't look big enough to have a standard RJ45.
it's about this big on it. There's a little wire.
So it does stick out
It's an
the side.
adapter on it.
No,
It's an adapter.
yeah, actually it may very well, but this is what it is. It's an
Clear plastic, you can
RJ45.
watch the electrons.
And yes, it does have a piece that sticks out. The other expansion cards don't, except they do have a storage expansion card way down at the bottom, which I may be able to show you by moving my browser up a little.
I'll scroll down a little bit more.
I know I have to get rid of these guys. And this is what their expansion looks like. It stays entirely inside the machine,
Inside, wait,
inside the
That's
frame. It's on one of these slots, the same thing that a port would be.
but that little block is sticking out, an inch by an inch.
No, there's like a little recess.
It's
So it's like a USB-C or a Thunderbolt port recessed 1 inch inside the edge of the machine. So when you stick that piece in, it goes inside.
Right, the nipple on it, if you will, is the male portion of the connection.
Yeah,
But the rest of it, the little white block,
no, that goes
It's
inside.
inside.
There's a notch for that. There's a cutout for that.
Yeah,
essentially.
it's
So
a
the port
cutout.
is recessed by a full inch inside the machine. It's just a recessed Thunderbolt port.
you physically have that recess on your machine?
I do. It goes in that far.
Oh,
And if I hit this button, it'll come out.
Think of it as a Thunderbolt port inside a little garage where you can just have a little piece of
I have
hardware.
to be careful not to destroy myself.
So how long has
Good
that
idea,
vendor
I
been
think.
around, Framework?
What?
How long has that vendor been around?
They've been around, I think, as a company for more than 5 years,
They're based
maybe
in,
more than a decade.
they based in China or
Taiwan.
Taiwan?
They're based in Taiwan. So if anything happens to Taiwan,
it's probably made by TSMC.
yeah. But everything you get is going to
Everything's made
come
by
from one of those
TSMC.
places anyway.
So they banned the routers coming from China.
Well, not anymore, they can't.
The Huawei.
Let's stop.
Only
Well, Huawei's already happened, but there's other ones they're talking about
Yeah,
for national
No,
I think
security.
they did, didn't they?
Foreign-made routers can be sold in the US based on new designs.
And there are no
I can't-
US made routers
Anywhere.
anywhere. So no routers, period.
US-made routers, they can sell if the components are US. And there is one company in Wisconsin that does the Verizon ONTs.
They're selling steam powered routers.
Oh, please. Oh.
They're a big contributor to
Big,
the,
baby,
somebody's
big,
campaign.
huh?
Well, anyway, so that's how it comes down to what I did. And
Did you compare that to like an off the shelf from a name manufacturer?
that's exactly what I did. And
Yeah,
I found that the pricing was similar. I paid maybe $200 premium for being able to build it. And that was at that time in November. Now, components are much more expensive. You'd have to do your own research again. I did $2,300 worth of configuring. So I did, let's say, maybe $400, $500 of configuring.
So Bob, you
Beyond
said something
this.
that was interesting. You said you paid $200 at the time, but use constant dollars. You said you paid $200 more for something that was comparable in a pre-configured laptop.
200 to 300 more.
Okay. What made up the 200 to 300 that was there? Or what was the reason for you doing the framework as opposed to a pre-configured?
Okay. First of all, I could get the components I wanted, and they would all be the components I wanted.
Meaning, in what way?
Meaning I didn't have to settle for less of this or more of that because somebody pre-configured it their way.
So they weren't the equivalent, they were comparable.
They were not the same, they were comparable. They were in the same class, but not the same exact specs.
So,
Each one of these has different specs.
all right, so you weren't comparing apples to apples.
I know it was not an exact head-to-head comparison for exactly the same components because you can't get the configuration that I got with the USB-A, the HDMI, the Wi-Fi 7, the two USB-C, and also the Ryzen AI 7350. If you find a laptop that's pre-configured that's got all of that, go for it. But I couldn't.
Now, just as another piece of trivia, what Bluetooth is on this?
Probably 5.4. I could look up specs on it.
does it have a fan or a heat sink in it?
It
comes
does have
with
a
the
fan.
guide.
It does have a fan.
Okay.
I
How often does
sometimes
that come on?
sometimes I hear the fan going if I'm doing something really intensive like a big file transfer. Or if I've got several different drives attached that are themselves powered. A fast data transfer is going to do that. A full virus scan, deep virus scan, will start doing the fan. I also do run Linux off of enclosures outside of the main computer, and I can do that on this one with one little problem. This AMD motherboard has a BIOS that has secure boot pretty much hard-coded into it, making it difficult to avoid these constant changes in the Microsoft blacklist. For Linux, what that means is your external SSD may not be recognized. And what you have to do is go into a BIOS option that says boot from a file. Then it will see the drive, even though there's nothing it wants to boot there because something got blacklisted. But then you go into your drive and you go into the boot sector, the boot partition, and you may have a file like a shim that will allow you to boot under secure boot.
Isn't that just boot order that you're doing?
No, it is secure boot, which requires certificates, or what Linux calls a shim. That's basically
My
your
Dell has the
signing.
same secure boot deal on it.
That's your signing.
So basically it says, this is an official piece of software from a known vendor. And all that stuff, as opposed to Bob's boot routine.
It has a key. It has a key known as an MOK. And those keys are held in an area of the BIOS that's called SBAT. And that's a database. And that database will from time to time get blacklists and whitelists. Microsoft is responsible for all.
And from a hardware perspective, that stuff is stored in a piece of memory that is independent of the operating system.
Yes,
It's like where the clock is stored and where some other stuff is stored. So that no matter what you do,
It's on the motherboard?
it's
No,
on the
BIOS.
motherboard, yeah. It's a small chunk of memory that just has what you need. For example, when you do a reboot versus a hard start, the reason it knows to do a reboot is because the first 4 bytes of that memory are coded 1, 2, 3, 4. And when it sees the first 4 bytes as 1, 2, 3, 4, it skips a bunch of steps and it goes on and does your reboot, as opposed to, I don't know what's going on here. Let me go find out, which is your hard boot.
okay, so we're to the point of what does everybody think? And we've been getting some of that. And by the way, for those who are either here or remote, who still haven't replaced their Windows 10 PCs, what are your plans?
So just to follow on, the reason I asked about the Bluetooth is, Joe, going back to what George has said about hearing aids and future audio things. 5.4 is an interesting marketing device. It includes, but not necessarily always has, things like the new audio protocols. And I don't know if they're called codecs or what they are. The new audio thing. So you may or may not have LE audio in 5.4, and you may or may not have the Aura, whatever, Auracast in the 5.4. So just something to look at.
Bluetooth 5.4.
Yeah, it's
Wi-Fi 7, BE, and Bluetooth 5.4. This is the AMD version.
right, and
Other-
whether it supports those other audio features.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
I don't know whether this laptop would do that, but if you find that you need to replace the Wi-Fi card with one that will,
Not Wi-Fi, Bluetooth.
Bluetooth is on the Wi-Fi card.
No, special.
So you may need to replace the Wi-Fi card in order to get a different Bluetooth.
And you get it from Qualcomm anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah, you can get Qualcomm Wi-Fi cards, and that may be what you need. You can swap that out.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, you can build your own.
In a
Anything
build
that's
your own, you can
swappable,
do that.
You can do it. It's almost like having a desktop PC with a motherboard on it, a true motherboard.